Major funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the California Council for the Humanities, a state program of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Additional funding was provided by the Helene and Detmar Walter Endowment Fund and this station and other public television stations nationwide.
Afternoon, Claire.
Judith, so nice to see you.
Judith, how are you?
Just fine. Why don't you step in,
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
On July 23, 1930, the Lemon Grove School Board called a special meeting. Some residents of Lemon Grove were concerned about the growing numbers of Mexican-American children in the elementary school.
Bill, I was up on the Bryan track last week. How your new grove's working out?
By outward appearances, Lemon Grove was a peaceful rural community. Mexicans and Anglos lived in separate parts of the small town, located just outside of San Diego, California.
Well, let's get started.
The Anglo community had little social contact with the Mexican community, except in the grammar school, where the children met as equals.
All right. Today, we'll dispense with the regular business. I called this special meeting for one reason. We received a formal request from the PTA, which Claire is going to present to us. Claire?
Thank you, Andy. As secretary of the Lemon Grove Parent Teachers Association, I have been asked to approach the school board with the following request. Whereas we, the members of the Lemon Grove PTA, deem that an emergency has arisen at the Lemon Grove Grammar School, we request that the school board establish a separate school for the Mexican children of this district. We feel that such a school has become a necessity due to a severe situation of overcrowding in the present classrooms. Furthermore, the Mexican children are deficient in their knowledge of the English language, causing their classmates to learn at a much slower rate. A separate school would also improve the general situation of sanitation and morals in the school, which has been deteriorating. We respectfully ask that the school board consider action on this petition immediately.
Thank you, Claire. Any comments?
Well, I can speak for the Chamber of Commerce. We would back the idea. From what I've heard, there are just too many kids in that school. You know, I understand that last week the toilets backed up.
Oh, that's not the first time that's happened.
The Chamber is planning a big promotion right now with advertisements in the newspaper and lots of publicity. If we want to bring new people here, I think we've got to have a separate school for the Mexicans.
I thought we were taking care of the Mexican problem with Catherine Elliott's class. Doesn't she teach most of them now?
Look, Catherine Elliott doesn't have all the Mexicans anymore. The older ones are moving out of her class.
Last year, the members of the PTA went to each of their homes. We wanted to take their children to the dentist. Lord knows, we tried to impress upon the mothers the importance of common cleanliness. But those homes, well, They've got so many kids, and if there's a stick of furniture in any of the rooms, it's a surprise. Most of the boys just run around barefoot. Heaven only knows what diseases they're bringing back to school.
Well, I think they'd be very grateful for a school over in their own neighborhood. They live together, they work together, they have their own parties, they should have their own school.
Do you really think they'd want that?
My son tells me that Miss Markland has to repeat herself over and over again for those kids. It's embarrassing. For all the kids.
Maybe they would feel better with their own kind.
They wouldn't have to work so hard just to keep up.
But I'm still a little worried about their reaction. You don't think this would cause a problem?
Not a bit. Separate schools are very common. In Chicago, they always had them for foreigners. It's the best way to Americanize them. There's no reason a Mexican school wouldn't work here.
Well, I don't see any reason for any further discussion. Is there a motion?
I move that the school board establish a separate school for the Mexicans.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Done. Bill, I'm going to appoint you to a committee.
What began as a simple decision by this school board would have far greater impact on the small community of Lemon Grove than anyone on the school board could have predicted. Lemon Grove in 1930 was like many rural towns in Southern California. Mild winters made it an ideal place to grow lemons and oranges. The town grew up around the railroad tracks, which carried its citrus away to the rest of the country. The Zonka Brothers General Store served as the social center of the community. Mexican workers contributed to the growth of Lemon Grove's industries, working in the rock quarry, the packing house, and the citrus orchards. Lemon Grove's only elementary school enrolled almost 200 students. By 1930, the fact that nearly half of these students were of Mexican heritage was a threat to some residents. For these children, the decision to build a separate Mexican school marked the beginning of a dramatic episode they would remember all their lives.
They thought they could get away with it, that we were too dumb.
It was not the kids that fought over who had to go to school, segregated, or who didn't. It was the parents.
We never bothered anybody. We mixed with the kids a lot.
You know, because a lot of those people, they were law-abiding. They were, hard workers, and they lived by the law and everything. And here, for somebody to do that to them, to their children, I think they were hurt.
At that time, racism and prejudice didn't seem to be a very prominent role in our lives as children.
But see, we always had that feeling, that they didn't want us around. They somehow or another, you knew.
Like many of their countrymen, the first Mexican settlers in Lemon Grove came north to the United States in the early 1900s. Many Mexicans were fleeing the turmoil of the Mexican Revolution of 1910, while others were seeking work in the booming border region during the 1920s. As new families arrived in Lemon Grove, they settled near one another on Olive Street, creating a Mexican barrio similar to the Mexican towns of other southwestern communities. Many of the Mexican families in Lemon Grove had roots in Baja California and had met each other on the trail north. As members of these families married one another and baptized each other's children, they strengthened the solidarity of the community.
They used to have dances here about every month, twice a month. The Mexican community used to have the dance.
My mother would make tamales and sell, and that's where everybody used to go to dance. But mostly it was in the house parties, birthday parties, baptismos, even wakes when somebody died.
We didn't invite any American people.
Oh, no.
We didn't.
And my father used to tell us at home, from the door outside, you're in the United States. From the door inside, you're in Mexico.
I used to sell a Mexican newspaper. And in order to be able to write the people's names, I had to learn how to read and write in Spanish. So my dad taught me the alphabet in Spanish, and then I learned before I went to school.
I touch my eyes.
I touch my eyes.
I have two eyes.
I have two eyes.
Most of the Mexican-American children spoke Spanish at home, but when they came to school, the instruction was in English. To teach them English, many school districts put Mexican-American pupils in separate classrooms called Americanization classes.
I have one nose.
I have one nose.
I touch my fingers.
I touch my fingers.
I have 10 fingers.
I have 10 fingers.
I touch my mouth.
I touch my mouth.
I have one mouth.
I have one mouth.
Come in. Good morning, Roberto.
Good morning, Miss Ellen. Miss Martin asked me to bring you this.
Thank you. Boys and girls, please. Thank you, Roberto. You can go back to your class now.
Thank you, Miss Ellen.
Did you see that, boys and girls? You can all learn from Roberto's example. He came in very politely. He didn't slam the door. He took his hat off. He gave me the note, and he said, thank you. Now, that's the way all of you should learn to behave.
You know, the thing would give you to pass you. Sometimes she give you a test to pass. But a lot of time, most of the time, she said, who wants to go to the second grade? Raise your right hand.
I don't remember them pushing any kind of education towards us, you know. Usually if we got out of line, they sent us home.
She had too many children, newcomers that were coming in, you know, and we were getting too old to be there.
Now, boys and girls, we're going to review the different kinds of clothing. I want you to repeat after me.
For many school districts, it was an easy step to move Mexican-American students from separate classrooms to entirely separate schools. In the 1920s, separate Americanization schools were created in community after community in the Southwest, following the established practice of segregated schools for Native Americans, Asians, and blacks. By the end of this decade, the majority of Mexican-American children attended segregated schools.
That is a sweater.
And that is the sweater.
The next order of business is the progress of the Olive Street School. Principal Green will present a report.
Well, I believe everything is in order. The new building is almost finished. I've notified all the teachers. We're making plans to send the books and personal belongings of the Mexicans over to the new school right now.
Will we be ready to move into the school after Christmas?
Well, everything will be ready, but I feel... Well, that is, don't you think it would be a good idea to notify the parents in some way? Say by sending a note home with the children so that they know about this move. Well, I just think it would be the proper thing to do. Well, suppose the Mexicans don't like this idea.
Look, Jerome, I guarantee they'll like the idea. There aren't going to be any problems. We send a note home, we might have some problems.
Andy, I really think it's best if we don't commit ourselves in writing on this one.
Yes, Ed, I agree. Anna, is there any other business?
We need to approve payment for the design of the Olive Street School.
Oh, the Panza bill.
Well, I think we were playing ball, and right there on North and Ollie, right almost on the corner, Mr. Green, he was either driving by, I guess, or somebody, and he called me over.
Good afternoon, Mr. Green.
And he asked me, would you do something? I said, sure. And then he told me if I would go to all the families and ask them if they would go to school or not, if they were going to send their children to school or not. And I said, okay. And he gave me the piece of paper.
You wanted to send on the left as they're coming and on the right as they're not.
Well, make sure you bring the completed sheet around to my house by Sunday afternoon.
And I only live, a couple of hundred yards down the road on North Avenue, so I went home. And my uncle was there, and I had the paper, and I was telling either him or my mother or somebody. And he just took the paper and tore it up. And that's about it. I didn't do it. So I told Mr. Green, my uncle tore the paper up. I can't do that for you. They won't let me do it.
Yeah, I guess all parents thought the same thing, because as soon as this happened, all our parents got together. We had meetings at his house. Bonilla's house. We had meetings there. I remember going to the meetings. I was just a kid then. There was my dad, there was his dad.
Se mire lo que están haciendo los gringos ahora.
Siempre haciéndonos la vida más pesada. Pero tenemos que mandar a nuestros hijos a la escuela de todas maneras.
No es justo lo que quieren hacer, mandar a los niños a una caballeriza. Es una locura.
Buenas noches. Ustedes saben por qué estamos reunidos en este momento. Todos hemos visto lo que han construido aquí en la calle Olivo, una caballeriza que le llaman escuela. Ahora sí sabemos cuándo piensan utilizarla para nuestros chamacos. Esto es un insulto, una humillación.
¿Pero por qué nos hacen esto después de tantos años? Yo no entiendo por qué quieren tratar a nuestros hijos diferente que los niños americanos.
Todo eso lo empezaron unas señoras que viven allá por la Golden Avenue, que no quieren que sus hijos se anden codeando con los niños mexicanos.
Además, no debemos olvidar que nosotros también pagamos impuestos.
Claro.
Nosotros también mantenemos la escuela.
Nuestros hijos deben ir a la escuela con los niños americanos. Así fue como Roberto aprendió a hablar el inglés. Mis hijos nacieron aquí, son ciudadanos.
Eso lo hacen nomás para tapar las cosas. Nos están tratando así solo porque somos mexicanos.
Y si nos dejamos, ya verán, en esa escuela todo va a ser de segunda. Ahí van a llevar los libros viejos, las mesas viejas.
Y hasta las maestras viejas.
No podemos dejarlos que hagan lo que quieran. Tenemos que unirnos. Yo propongo que formemos el comité de vecinos de Lemon Grove.
Estoy de acuerdo.
Si todos nos rehusamos a mandar a nuestros hijos a esa escuela, no podrán salirse con la suya. Nuestros hijos forman la mitad de la escuela.
Claro.
Dispense. ¿Estaba usted proponiendo que hagamos algo contra la ley y que saquemos a nuestros hijos de la escuela?
Es la única manera si queremos que los niños regresen a estudiar.
Bueno, yo no quiero ningún problema. Ustedes saben que yo trabajo para el condado y si hago eso, pues me van a echar del trabajo.
No nos pueden echar a todos. Nos necesitan tanto como nosotros a ellos. ¿Quiénes creen que van a piscar sus limones?
¿Y limpiar sus casas?
¿En verdad creen ustedes que somos indispensables? ¿Creen que a ellos les importa si nosotros o alguien más hace el trabajo? No nos hagamos tontos. Son tiempos difíciles y además hay un montón de gente buscando trabajo. Ya lo verán cuando se traigan a los Oquis para que tomen nuestros puestos, ¿eh?
Puede ser que tenga razón.
Esto es más importante que cualquier trabajo. No vinimos aquí solamente para trabajar. Vinimos para darles una vida mejor a nuestros hijos y para nosotros mismos. Para darles mejor educación. Tenemos que pensar en ellos.
Bueno, yo no sé. No podemos ir contra la ley así nomás. Estamos viviendo en este país y tenemos que respetar las leyes americanas.
Pero ellos mismos van en contra de sus propias leyes cuando no dejan que nuestros hijos vayan a su escuela.
Claro. Todos sabemos que está muy dura la situación, pero si aceptamos esta falta de respeto, ¿cómo vamos a cobrar el respeto de nuestros propios hijos?
Bueno, ¿y por qué no mandamos los niños a la escuela nueva? No. Por lo menos para ver qué pasa, ¿no?
No, absolutamente no. Todos venimos aquí por distintas razones, pero siempre nos hemos apoyado. Yo creo que ya llega la hora de que nos pongamos firmes si queremos tener el respeto de nuestros propios hijos.
No, yo no estoy de acuerdo en eso.
Tenemos que mantenernos unidos.
Claro, me van a correr de la chamba, hombre.
Tenemos que pensar en su futuro.
On the first day of school after Christmas vacation, some Mexican parents decided to send their children to school. Other parents, convinced there would be trouble, didn't send their children to school at all.
Now, boys and girls, I want you to give me your attention. Now, I'd like all the Mexican students to line up over here. Now, the rest of you should go up to your classrooms. Now, come along now, move. Off you go. Come along. That's the way. No, not you, Roberto. Carlos, you belong over here. Come along, you girls. Come along, off you go. That's it. Come on, you belong over here. Come along, move along. Your books have already been sent over to the Olive Street School. Miss Elliott and Miss Markland are over there now waiting for us. Come along, move off to class. We should be walking over there in a moment. But for now, I want you to stay here. Now, what are you doing here? You should be in class. Come on, off to your class. Right now. Come on, move.
I know that the kids that I hung around with, or this side of the tracks, we didn't want to go to the school because the school looked funny. It was a big old barn, and here the other regular school was Staco and much nicer school. Yeah. Even if it meant, you know, that we would all be together with our friends, we still didn't like it. We could tell the difference.
As the Mexican community began their boycott, the administration of President Herbert Hoover took the lead in blaming high unemployment on Mexican workers. In early 1931, the Hoover administration instituted a national repatriation program for Mexicans. Over the next 8 years, nearly 500,000 people of Mexican descent were sent back to Mexico, including many who were American citizens.
This is stories that they were told when Mr. Lovely was trying to intimidate some of the families and force the parents to send the kids to school. And one of the stories that I heard was that she came to David's mother's house and flashed the badge and said, you know, that she had to do that.
Is your mama home, son?
Just a minute.
Sí, señor.
Are you the mother of Norma, Roberto, and David Ruiz?
Sí.
Well, your kids have been out of school for the past couple of weeks. I can't let this truancy continue.
¿Qué dice?
Dice que tenemos que regresar a la escuela, que él no puede permitir que no estemos en la escuela.
Dile que fueron a la escuela y ellos mismos no los dejaron asistir. Que el señor Green los detuvo en la puerta y no los dejó entrar. Dile.
She said you wouldn't let us into school. That Mr. Green stood at the door and wouldn't let us in.
No, ma'am, that's not true. The kids are supposed to be attending the new school over there on Olive Street.
Dice que no es cierto, que debemos ir a la escuela nueva.
Esa no es una escuela. Yo no voy a mandar a mis hijos a esa caballeriza. Hijito, dile que cuando dejen entrar a los niños a la escuela normal, entonces los mandaré con mucho gusto.
She says she's not sending us back to the barn. That when you let us back in the regular school, she'll be happy to send us.
Now, look, ma'am, my job is to make sure your kids are in school. When they don't go to school, I have to report them. Right now, you're breaking the law.
Dice que estamos haciendo algo contra la ley.
Son ustedes mismos los que van contra la ley por no dejar entrar a los chamacos a la escuela.
She says you're the ones who broke the law by not allowing us into school.
Now, look, Mrs. Ruiz, I know that you've been receiving public assistance from the county ever since your husband died. If they knew you were breaking the law, they'd stop your payments. Tell her.
El señor dice que recibimos la ayuda del condado. Y si se dan cuenta de lo que estamos haciendo, nos van a quitar la ayuda.
¿Y él qué tiene que ver con la ayuda del condado?
She wants to know what you have to do with the county.
Now, look, I have sworn to uphold the law. And if you're going to continue to break the law, then I'm going to have to report you to the county. You know that'll mean the end of your payments.
Dice que si seguimos contra la ley, el señor va a reportarnos al condado. Y entonces no nos darán dinero.
me impresiona su placa, señor. Yo puedo mandar a Roberto a la tienda a comprar una igualita.
She's not impressed with your badge.
I can go further than reporting you to welfare. I can go down to immigration. They wouldn't think twice about deporting you.
Váyase al diablo.
I think you better go.
We'll see who'll have to go. See, Mrs. Ruiz. We'll see what's what.
Very shortly after that, they were deported. They picked up the whole family, and I guess that he knows probably, he fueron para Tijuana, ¿verdad?
Sí,
Yeah.
sí. Well, they took advantage because we were supported by the government because my father had died. And according to them, it was for that reason that we were sent back. And I had, I was Roberto, Enrique, Jorge, Laura, Lupe, 5 brothers that were born here. You spend half of your life, your young kid life here in the States. Then they throw you back to a country that you haven't lived there very much. Then you don't know exactly which country you have to belong to first.
Esta situación es difícil. Me gustaría poder ayudar a estas personas, pero no sé. Adelante.
His dad and a group went and made a formal complaint to the Mexican consul and asked for help. And that's the way the whole thing got started.
Señor Noon, qué gusto verlo otra vez.
¿Cómo está? My dad knew Fred Noon, I think from Nogales, Arizona. And when he came to San Diego, why, every time he needed him, he'd go see him. And Fred Noon would give him advice on what to do.
Señor Consul, le presento a Juan González y al señor Ricardo Castellanos y la señora Ramona Alvarez.
Mucho gusto. Encantado. Señor González, el licenciado Noon me ha explicado brevemente la situación de Lemon Grove y también he recibido su carta. Pero me gustaría que me explicara usted con más detalle qué es lo que ha ocurrido.
Muchas gracias, señor cónsul. Estamos aquí representando al comité de vecinos de Lemon Grove. La mesa directiva de la escuela quiere mandar a los niños mexicanos a una escuela separada de segunda clase. Los quieren mandar a esa escuela sin tomar en cuenta su edad o capacidad.
Nosotros, los padres de familia, nos negamos a mandar a nuestros niños a esa escuela que construyeron para ellos. Es una caballeriza.
Dicen los periódicos que nosotros estamos en huelga. Sin embargo, son ellos los que no dejan ir a los chamacos a la escuela. Cónsul Ferreira, venimos a escuchar sus consejos.
¿Qué le dijeron ustedes a los niños?
Pues ya les habíamos dicho que si las maestras los mandaban a esa caballeriza, pues que era mejor que vinieran a la casa.
¿Y qué hicieron los niños?
Pues se regresaron a la casa.
Ya tienen un mes fuera de la escuela. No mandarlos es ir contra la ley. El señor Lovelace, el inspector escolar, ya anda por ahí haciendo algunas preguntas.
¿Cuánto tiempo tienen ustedes en este país?
Muchos de nosotros tenemos más de 20 años aquí, señor cónsul. La mayoría de nuestros hijos nacieron en este país.
Señor González, déjeme asegurarle que el gobierno mexicano considera que esta situación es muy grave, con implicaciones que van más allá de esta pequeña comunidad. Con tanta gente cesante, nos preocupa cualquier hostigamiento a la población mexicana. Esta supuesta escuela de americanización no es más que un pretexto para segregar a los niños mexicanos y, consecuentemente, darles una educación inferior.
Eso es exactamente lo que les dije, señor cónsul.
Este problema es muy serio. No solo está sucediendo en Lemon Grove. En este momento hay una proposición para abrir escuelas separadas en todo el estado. Y si esta propuesta se convierte en ley, entonces no va a importar si los niños mexicanos son buenos estudiantes o no. Tendrán el poder legal para segregar a todos los niños mexicanos. No hay que olvidar que la situación económica es muy seria y que una ley como esta tiene muy buenas posibilidades de ser aprobada.
Entonces, ¿nos va a ayudar, señor cónsul?
Tengo que ser muy cuidadoso. El gobierno mexicano no se puede involucrar abiertamente en los asuntos internos de los Estados Unidos. Pero tienen ustedes todo mi apoyo. Y el abogado Nun está aquí para servirles en lo que se les ofrezca.
God damn that Green. Why'd he go and warn the Mexicans?
Well, I told you, we should have kept a tighter rein on him.
Damn.
I never thought it would lead to something like this.
Well, what's gotten into these Mexicans anyway?
I can't get over what's happened. You're sure they filed legal papers in Superior Court?
There's no doubt about it.
I'm sorry I'm late. I couldn't leave the school until just now.
Let's get started. The situation is getting out of control. I think the Mexicans have talked with the Mexican consul. He's denied it, but I don't believe him.
You've gotten the Mexican government involved?
Now, Anna...
I never expected this. How long is this going to drag on? You know, the Chamber of Commerce is in the middle of a major promotional campaign in the papers. Here we are trying to publicize the virtues of Lemon Grove, and there are articles in the press on a school war. How do you think that makes us look?
Our daily attendance has dropped by more than 40%. I hate to bring this up, but every day they're out of school, we're losing money from the state.
Look, Jerome, if you hadn't have gone and warned the Mexicans, this would never have happened. It's your fault, you know.
That's not true. The Mexicans knew the school was being built.
They knew about the school, but they didn't know it was being built just for them.
Well, I didn't think they would react so harshly if they knew about it beforehand.
You're new to Lemon Grove. I think we know best how to handle things here.
There's a reporter from the San Diego Sun at the front door. He says he wants to speak to a member of the school board.
That's all we need. Andy, you better talk to him.
Oh, God. Hi, I'm Andy Anderson. How can I help you?
Are you on the Lemon Grove School Board?
Yes, I'm chairman.
Well, I understand that the Mexican community has filed suit against the school board.
Yes, they have. And I can tell you that we're really surprised by all this. We've appropriated money for a brand new school in their neighborhood. We thought they'd be just delighted with the new school, but they've all gone on strike.
Well, was this strike action, as you're calling it, instigated by the Mexican consulate here in San Diego?
No, I really can't say that.
All the Mexicans refused to go to the new school.
All but 3. Their father told us somebody threatened to burn his house down because he sent his kids to the school. Now, we've taken out $1,000 worth of insurance for him.
You know, Lemon Grove seems so peaceful. How could this happen here?
Now, that's a good question. I think some troublemakers, maybe from Los Angeles, have gotten these Mexicans all fired up. This isn't like our Mexicans here. They wouldn't have done this on their own. Now, we think they're following orders from someone else. Or maybe even a foreign organization based down in Mexico.
All rise. The Superior Court of San Diego County is now in session. The Honorable Claude Chambers, judge presiding. Be seated and come to order.
Good morning, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the case of Roberto Alvarez versus the Lemon Grove School Board, consisting of E.L. Owen, Anna White, and Andy Anderson individually, and Jerome Green, principal. Are you ready, counsel?
Your Honor, Fred Noon for Roberto Alvarez, who is present in court.
Thank you, Mr. Noon.
Your Honor, Philip Smith, appearing for Lemon Grove School Board, present in court.
Thank you, gentlemen. You may proceed.
Yes, sir. I call Roberto Alvarez.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Why do you think they chose you to be the person that would represent the community?
I don't know. He was a good-looking guy.
He's one of the few guys that had shoes.
He was a very intelligent boy. He was a very hard worker, and he was very good in school. He always got good grades, good student.
Roberto, where were you born?
La Mesa, California.
Do you like school?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any problems in school?
No, not until this whole thing happened.
Fred Noon, he looked to me like just a regular guy, a good lawyer, and very firm and very capable from what I can remember. I remember part of the court, what happened in court, and he was quite a cat. He was a good guy.
Roberto, have you been able to understand everything that's been said in English here today?
Yes, sir.
Do you know Carla Smith?
Yes, sir.
Is Carla Smith a student in Miss Catherine Elliott's classroom?
Yes, he is.
Now, that's a classroom for Mexican children who do not speak English.
Yes, sir.
Does Carla Smith speak English?
Yes, he does.
Does he speak Spanish?
No, he doesn't. We always had to translate for him.
So Carla Smith, an English-speaking child who doesn't even speak Spanish, is in the separate classroom for Spanish speakers?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Roberto. No further questions.
Roberto, how old are you?
12.
And what grade are you in?
5th grade.
By your own calculation, Roberto, haven't you failed to remain on a par scholastically with the other students your age?
Objection. That line of questioning is meant only to confuse my client.
Yes. Objection sustained.
Roberto, let me simplify my question so that you can understand it.
He questioned me about why I didn't want to go to school, and frankly, I said because my parents didn't want me to go, that they didn't want me to go, and I obey my parents. I think that was one of the questions I asked.
Roberto, where is your house located in relation to the Olive Street School?
Right around the corner.
Then the Olive Street School would be closer to your house than the present school.
Yes, sir.
Do you think Miss Markland is a good teacher?
Yes, she's fine.
Do you think you could learn from Miss Markland if she were to teach you at the Olive Street School?
I guess so.
No further questions.
What is your name?
Florine Markland.
Be seated.
Oh, Mrs. Markland, no, I remember Mrs. Markland very vividly on the stand because she was a hostile witness.
They've started this new school so that the Mexican students will not feel embarrassed about the superior abilities of their classmates. You see, in this way, the Mexican children will not develop feelings of inferiority.
And you can say without a doubt that the Mexican students are behind in their studies.
Absolutely. I could go down the list of Mexican children in my class and tell you just how far behind each of them is. Roberto Ruiz is a year behind. Jesus Bonilla is 2 years. Roberto Alvarez is a year. Mary Quintero is 2 years. And Francis Romero is 2 years behind.
Miss Markland, do you have any prejudices against the Mexican people?
No, I do not. Now, I believe that this Americanization school was built with the interests of the Mexican children in mind. They'll be taught the language, the customs, and the culture of this country. You have to realize that most of these children come from homes where ignorance and poverty prevail.
Objection. The witness is stating an opinion.
Objection sustained.
Miss Markland, would you simply describe what you have seen in the Mexican homes?
Their homes have no books, magazines, or even newspapers. The only time English is spoken is at school. Since health and sanitation are problems in their homes, it's only natural that they have difficulties concentrating on school. I feel that the Americanization school will improve their lives.
Thank you, Miss Markland. No further questions.
You may cross-examine, Mr. Noon.
Thank you, Your Honor. How long have you been teaching school, Miss Markland?
1 year.
Only 1 year. I see. And what grades would you be teaching in this so-called Americanization school?
I would teach the 5th through the 8th.
You would teach all 4 grades?
Yes, that's right.
And who would teach the other 4 grades?
Miss Catherine Elliott.
So the two of you, you with only 1 year experience, and Miss Elliott, who I understand is almost ready to retire, the two of you would each teach 4 grades?
Miss Elliott is a good teacher, Mr. Noon.
I'm sure she is, Miss Markland. Now, if you will answer my question, each of you would teach 4 grades?
Yes.
And our attorney kept telling him, well, how can you take care one teacher and teach 4 grades, 4 upper grades when Mr. Green and would teach the 8th grade, and here's a man with a PhD. I don't remember whether he said PhD, but, a well-qualified teacher to teach 1 grade. How can you teach 4 grades better than they could at the other school? And she kept saying, because I can give them personal attention. She wouldn't get off that track.
Miss Markland, when there are white students behind in their grade level, what do you do with them?
They're kept in a lower grade.
You don't segregate them.
We don't segregate anyone, Mr. Noon.
Simply answer the question, Miss Markland. You don't segregate them?
No, we do not.
What was the purpose of segregating the Mexican students from the other children?
As I've explained, the idea was to give them more individual attention.
So, Miss Markland, you're telling me that you segregate the Mexican students who are behind, but not the white students. Isn't that right?
Well...
Isn't that right, Miss Markland?
Well, I suppose if you put it that way. Yes.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. Miss Markland, you may step down. You may call your next witness, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Call E.L. Owen.
¿No te acuerdas del Owens? Owens was a trustee. Owens and Andy Anderson. And there was another one. I don't remember the other one. But Owens had a couple of kids. This is just rumors and gossip that looked like Mexicans. They were dark complected, and somebody mistook them for. This could be completely untrue, but nevertheless I heard it. That they who are those Mexican boys? They're nice looking little boys. Y eran hijos del cuate pues del Owens, y se cagó todo el viejo. And I mean, that's what the Mexicans were talking about.
Mr. Owen, who ordered the separation of the Mexican children?
Well, the school board did.
And where did this idea come from?
Well, it was our idea.
Mr. Owen, I've had a chance to examine the minutes of the board meeting for July 23, 1930. In those minutes, there is reference to a letter which the PTA, with the endorsement of the Chamber of Commerce, presented to the school board. Do you recall that letter?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Isn't it true that in that letter the PTA petitioned the school board to establish a separate Mexican school?
Well, yes.
Who signed that letter?
Well, it was signed by the secretary of the PTA.
And who is the secretary of the PTA?
Claire Owen.
Is Claire Owen any relation to you?
Yes, she is. She's my wife.
Oh, I see. So this is a family affair.
Objection, Your Honor. I move that Mr. Noon's last comment be stricken from the record.
Objection sustained.
No further questions.
You may step down, Mr. Owen. That's all. Thank you. Mr. Smith, you may call your next witness.
Call Mr. Anderson. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name.
Andy Anderson.
Be seated. Mr. Anderson, what is your occupation?
I own a gas station in Lemon Grove.
And how long have you lived in Lemon Grove?
8 years.
You participate in the civic affairs of the community?
Yes, sir. I'm presently fire chief and chairman of the Lemon Grove School Board.
Now, Mr. Anderson, would you please tell the court why the school board decided to create a new public school in Lemon Grove?
Well, there's a safety issue involved here. Right now, to get to school, the Mexicans have to cross Imperial Avenue and the railroad tracks, and it's dangerous for them. We've solved that problem by putting a new school right in their own neighborhood.
Now, Mr. Anderson, you were also concerned with overcrowding, were you not?
Yes, sir. We had a real emergency situation here. There's simply too many kids in that school. Why, the toilets were backing up on us last month.
Now, Mr. Anderson, one final question. Once the Mexican students had learned English and had been Americanized, what then would the school board do with those students?
Why, we'd bring them right back into regular school. Fast you can say lickety-split.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. No further questions.
Mr. Noon, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Anderson, did the school board take any steps to find out how the Mexican parents felt about the separate school?
No, sir.
Mr. Anderson, I understand that you're not particularly well-liked in the Mexican community. In fact, isn't it true that they boycotted your gas station?
Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning is irrelevant.
Your Honor, the purpose of my question is to establish the social atmosphere in Lemon Grove so that we can better understand the motives of the school board.
Objection overruled. You may answer the question, Mr. Anderson.
Well, these are hard times, Your Honor. Business goes up and down. But as far as I know, there's never been any boycott against me by the Mexicans.
And you're not aware of any animosity against you in the Mexican community?
No.
Well, not really boycott, but a lot of people wouldn't go because they knew
They
that
were
they
mad
had
at
to.
him for what he was one of the instigators.
Yeah, because we knew the way he treated the Mexican people. He didn't like Mexican people.
Mr. Anderson, you testified that one of the reasons the school board created the new school on the west side of town was that it would be closer to the homes of the Mexican children. Therefore, they wouldn't have to cross to the east side of town to get to school. You said this would be safer for them, isn't that correct?
Yes.
But isn't it true that some of the Mexican children live on the same side of the street as the regular public school, so they'll still be crossing that dangerous boulevard to go to the new Olive Street school?
Well, yes, I guess that's true.
And isn't it also true that some white children live on the west side of town, closer to the Olive Street school?
Well, there may be a few.
So right now, some white children are risking their lives every day crossing that dangerous boulevard to get to school.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Anderson, you testified that once the pupils of Mexican parentage were Americanized, they'd be admitted back into the regular school. Are you aware of the fact that 95% of these students were born here in America?
Well, I wouldn't know the exact figures.
In fact, many of the students that you propose to segregate in the Olive Street school already speak English. Isn't that correct?
I really don't know the answer to that, Mr. Noon.
Mr. Anderson, are you telling the court that you're prepared to send students to this Americanization school without even knowing whether or not they speak English? Mr. Anderson, please answer the question.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
All rise. Be seated and come to order.
Good afternoon, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ready with my ruling. Well, counsel, I understand that a few children can be separated if they require special instruction in order to improve their education. But to separate as a group all pupils of Mexican parentage, that can only be done by infringing on the laws of the state of California. These Mexican students are of the Caucasian race. Therefore, they are excluded from those state laws which allow the segregation of Negro, Oriental, and Indian children. Now, I don't blame the Mexican children for this segregation, just because a few of them happen to be behind in their schoolwork. On the contrary, that's an argument in their favor. I believe that this separation denies the Mexican children of the daily presence of American children, which itself is so necessary for their learning of English. I find, therefore, that the Lemon Grove School Board is without the power to establish and maintain a separate school solely for pupils of Mexican heritage. Such an action violates the rights of these students. The school board is therefore ordered to immediately admit the petitioner, Roberto Alvarez, and all 74 Mexican students back into the regular school building, where they are to receive instruction on an equal basis with all other students. That's all, counsel. Thank you.
All rise. Court is now adjourned.
Well, we felt good, but we didn't, throw our weight around or anything like that because we had won. But we just, just felt good.
They told us, don't start yelling, don't start being a big shot. Just go back to school and go to class and do the best you can.
No, they were happy. Yeah. They were happy because their children, had just as much right here as anybody else. Sure, and it made them feel good, too, that we were really that dumb, like they said we were,
But I think that in general, the American community, they didn't mind the decision in the least. I think they might have, some of them might have even welcomed it. But I think there was a few diehards that they couldn't, like Owens, and they happened to be on the school board, and Andy Anderson, Chabilsky, they were at the, if there was a chamber of commerce of any kind, I'm sure they were all leaders in it, and I think they were the ones that were really responsible for trying to kick us out or trying to segregate us.
They've denied our request that the court pay our attorney's fees and ordered us to pay for their attorney as well.
Jesus Christ, we've got to pay for their attorney fees, too.
I can't believe he ruled in favor of the Mexicans. Why can't we appeal the case? Claude Chambers has a reputation for being a liberal judge. If we take this case to a higher court, we can win.
I'm sorry, Claire. The Chamber of Commerce will oppose any further legal action. I think the publicity has already damaged Lemon Grove's reputation enough. Andy, I think we got to live with this decision. The sooner we accept this verdict, the better. There's no saying, Claire, that we would even win at a higher court level.
Well, I just want you to know I have already been approached by several parents in the PTA who are terribly upset about the judge's ruling, and they told me if we let those greasers come back, they'll take their children out of school.
Look, Claire, our hands are tied. We spent money for the new school. We spent money to go to court. And now we have to spend money to pay for all the attorney fees. We can't afford to continue this. I have to agree with Bill. Let's get on with business.
We have to approve our teachers' contracts for next year. Now, we've all had a chance to review the files on each of the candidates. As I call their names, please signify by saying aye or nay. Mrs. Balby?
Aye.
Nessie Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Adams?
Aye.
Catherine Elliott?
Aye.
Florine Markland?
Aye.
Jerome Green?
Nay.
Nay. One of the important things, looking back now that I'm older, is that here's a group of people that are fresh out of Mexico, and a lot of them out of Baja California, and
legal.
And they had kids that were born here that were American citizens, natural born, and that they were not just wetbacks running around here loose. That they were stern, sturdy people with education that had schooling, and they had the guts and in a strange country to get together and say this is wrong, and they fought it and won. I think that's important.
To order a VHS cassette of the Lemon Grove incident, call 1-800-266-57